Joining me now, Scott Taylor, former Congressman, 2nd District in Southeast Virginia, that's Eastern Shore, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and now an announced candidate for U.S. Senate trying to take on Mark Warner. Scott, sorry for the rant. Good to have you with us.
Hey, good to be with you, John. You're on a roll, man.
I know.
I don't want to get in the way when you're on a roll.
Well, sorry about that. I don't let that happen too much, but the number of people that got in the administration who don't support his agenda, if we don't come to grips with this, when Trump gets reelected to a second term, it's just simply going to happen again.
I think a couple of things you pointed out are very important. Yes, you have people that are in the administration that are actively working to undermine the president, right? You also have people who are legit people, right? They are legit patriots. They've served the country. They believe in what they believe in terms of foreign policy and stuff like that. And it's true. You have to make sure on the front end, are these people okay with our agenda, right? It doesn't mean they're bad people or anything like that. But the reality is the president sets foreign policy. And if they weren't on board with his foreign policy, then they shouldn't serve there, right? And I think you're right. I think it's important to vet them, and I don't mean that in a negative way against them or against the president. It's just a fact, right? Do you agree with can you serve in my administration along the lines of what I believe foreign policy should be? Yes or no? You know what I mean? And then if they can't, cool. Thanks for your service, but we're going to the person that has the credentials and agrees with where we're going with foreign policy. I think what you said is perfectly right and appropriate.
Exactly. And if you look at one of the earlier, I think it was Yovanovitch, the one, the very emotional testimony. She was upset she got fired and all that. I mean, my view on that is she should have got fired on January 21st, 2017. I mean, why did she get fired
You're
3
right.
years later? She was in there undermining everything the president was trying to do because she didn't believe in the agenda. So whose fault is that? It's our fault.
That's right. And we have to look in the mirror and be like, okay, we should have respectfully removed all of these people who weren't on board in the very beginning. It's much harder, as we're seeing, to do so afterwards. And of course, the Dems are just utilizing the fact that she's, upset. We could have handled her a little better, I think.
Yeah.
I think, for sure. That's a lesson learned, of course. But because she's a legit person, she just didn't agree with the agenda, and her feelings are hurt. And and her testimony in the public eye, you can empathize with her. But the reality is, the president sets the policy. If she can't get on board, she shouldn't be there.
Exactly. You know what? None of the Republicans in the Bush administration were there 1 month after Obama took office. They were all gone. Every single one of them were gone. Every one of them. Now, we have ambassadors and charte d'affaires all over the world that are Obama appointees that hate this president. I'll give you one. I'll just give you an example that pops in the top of my head. The charte d'affaires of Bermuda. I mean, if you go to her Facebook page, she blasts Trump every day. She is essentially serving at the pleasure of the president. She's still there. Yeah. Nobody will do anything.
It's just inappropriate. To Obama's credit, he removed everybody and put people in place that were on board with him. That's yes, in retrospect, that's what we should have done.
Exactly.
And once the president's reelected, he should do the same thing. He should do that as soon as he steps in again in January of 21.
Yeah, and so if we don't point it out, the same thing is going to happen again, and we're going to be in the same same situation. All right, let's get to the impeachment hearings. What happens now? Do you think it'll? I mean, it's going to go to the Judiciary Committee. Obviously, they're going to recommend 1 or 2 articles of impeachment. Do you think it passes the House, Scott Taylor?
Look, I mean, if it comes up, I think it will pass the House because I think they have the votes, right? But what I was pleased to see. If they move forward, I mean, I think they're in a bad situation, quite frankly. I mean, when you look at the testimony, I saw this meme yesterday. I talked about the shift show being canceled after 5 days of low ratings. It was terrible, right? But the reality is what they were trying to do with witnesses like the ambassador from Ukraine. Not that there was substance there because she wasn't even there when all this stuff was going on. Supposedly, she was already gone. But her testimony was designed to get public opinion on the opposite side of the president, right? That's why they did some of these witnesses. That being said, it didn't work. It didn't move the needle really at all politically. And so, and then obviously substantively, there's really nothing there. There's really just nothing there. So I think they're in a bind, Democrats. If they move, their base is going to push them to move forward with impeachment, but they have a big problem, and they have a big problem in the Senate, because now you see that the president, the White House, and the Senate, if they take it up in trial, they're going to call Republican witnesses. It's not going to be the Schiff show. There's not going to be selective leaks and blocked witnesses, Republican witnesses. You're going to see Biden and his son be called to testify. You may even see Adam Schiff and you should see Adam Schiff under oath as a fact witness in the Senate in a trial. So they got big problems. And if they move forward with impeachment, I do think they have the votes to do it. But if they do that, then you're going to see a trial in the Senate that's going to be more favorable to Republicans, and it's going to turn the narrative back around. So, I mean, they're in a bad spot, man. But if they do draft impeachment articles, I do think they will, just because they have the votes, and that's how the House runs, man. It's majoritarian, right? And Democrats, as we've talked about on your program before, they stick together.
They stick together. This is obviously, it's interesting, Scott Taylor. We're with Scott Taylor, former congressman, 2nd District, Southeast Virginia Republican. He's running for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Virginia to take on Mark Warner. That'll be decided in a June 2020 primary in Virginia. There are many other candidates either running now or could run. But I am not shy, and make no bones about the fact that I've already 100% endorsed Scott Taylor for U.S. Senate, and I believe he will run a very vigorous, energetic, fact-based campaign as we go into 2020. So, Scott Taylor, let's look at this and Mark Warner. So it's going to go to the Senate, and the Republicans are going to have a trial and call their witnesses. So if you're Mark Warner, what do you do?
Oh, he's gonna vote. He's gonna vote against the president. He has to. If he's in a bind too, right? I mean, the reality is, if he votes for it, then he's okay with his base. But he's boxed into a ridiculous vote, right? That we're gonna hammer him on it. If he votes against it, he may get a primary, and he doesn't want a primary because he'd be in trouble. If he had a strong progressive candidate, Mark Warner would be in trouble in a primary. So you can bet that he will vote against the president if it comes to that.
And so then what? I mean, he votes against the president, so he votes for impeachment with no evidence. Is that,
yep.
And I believe Scott Taylor is going to be the nominee for U.S. Senate, Republican side, running against Mark Warner. So my question is that a campaign issue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like it should be for the Congress people like Elaine Luria and Sparrenberger. It should be, because they supported, as you know and your audience knows, before they knew anything. They were just top cover for Pelosi. They're Pelosi puppets. And the same thing with Warner. Warner's got a huge problem in Virginia and beyond, because he sat there behind classified information and told you and everybody else in the country that there was overwhelming evidence of Russian collusion, traitorous behavior between this president and Putin. So he politicized intelligence. 10% of the population in Virginia are veterans. They understand immediately you don't politicize intelligence, because it puts lives at stake. It puts relationships between nation states at stake. He's got a big problem, and this will just add to it. And we're going to call him out and hold him accountable every step of the way.
Now, Scott Taylor, I agree with you. And look, I like Mark Warner personally. As you know, I voted for him against Ed Gillespie and endorsed him in, I guess it was 2014. I thought he was the right man at the time for the Intel Committee, and I was not a fan of Ed or his campaign. But I got to tell you, I really think him coming on television week after week after week, saying that, where there's smoke, there's fire. He's got information we don't have. There's something there. I mean, he did it for months.
It's disqualifying, I think.
I really
you're
think
sitting there behind classified intelligence, and you're politicizing that. It's disqualifying. And you politicize the Intelligence Committee, which, John, a lot of our listeners may or may not know, both in the House and the Senate. Now, Schiff and Warner have the Intelligence Committee is designed not to be a partisan one. It's quiet. It's the secrets and with threats and intelligence and what's going on for our country. If you're in the military, you're a veteran, you know you do not politicize intelligence, period, because it gets people killed and it can cause wars, quite frankly. And so the reality is I think it's his behavior and going on television for 2 years and politicizing what's supposed to be classified intelligence for his own political benefit is absolutely disqualifying.
I think it's going to be a real issue, and if you make it a campaign issue, I'm not sure anybody else would. That's why I've already endorsed your candidacy. If you make it a campaign issue, the senator's going to have to answer for this, and it's not an answer that he's going to be comfortable with. And those of us that know the senator well enough, I mean, he doesn't like to be pressed on stuff like this, and he's going to have to answer to it. And I frankly, as somebody that voted for him in 2014. I was very disappointed in that because I thought he was a little bit different. And then, at the beginning, I didn't totally believe him, but I was questioning it. Well, maybe there is something that no one has, even though I know that everybody was in the campaign. Like, what does he have?
Man. Like, I like him personally too. And I like him personally too. And he's not a fringe guy. Like, he's a serious politician. Everyone believes him. The New York Times did an expose on the guy, thinking that he's got the goods on this president because he's this legit guy, but he lied and he politicized intelligence, and he's got to be held accountable for that. There's no question about it.
Well, I think you're definitely going to be able to do that. And getting back, Scott Taylor, to how tough it is to get our people into key positions. I mean, the president himself wanted you to be an ambassador last December at a Christmas party. The president himself said, I want Scott Taylor to be an ambassador of this country, and we just couldn't ever get it done. And nobody could figure out why, right? So
I don't know. It's interesting. They did, if you remember, they removed an ambassador who was a career diplomat.
Right.
Before that could even happen. And I don't know if it's because of that. Yeah, exactly. Because I think, from what I remember, I think she had problems, the same thing, like making statements or something like that opposed to the president. And so I don't know if that has something to do with it, because as you know, it's very political.
Yeah,
very political. And so I just don't know.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you. I mean, you had the president of the United States say, "Look, would you be ambassador to Qatar? I'd like to make a change there," and it couldn't get done. And this is the president of the United States, couldn't even get through his own system. So this is kind of what we're dealing with, and hopefully in his second term, this is going to be able to change. All right, Scott Taylor, give us your assessment on what happened in Virginia this past election. I mean, you served in the House of Delegates when they had an overwhelming majority. What happened?
So I think fundamentally, just probably the biggest two factors that help flip it is, number one, the districts. The Berkeley, California court-drawn districts were not favorable to Republicans. So a lot of these people, like a Chris Jones or a Chris Stolley, they were just running against math, man. Their districts changed dramatically, and it was very tough for them just mathematically to be able to win. That, on top of the fact that there was massive amounts of money, somewhere around like 85% of it coming from New York and California. So those two things together were huge contributors to that. And to give you an example, Bill DeSteph down here, his opponent, she probably, on a normal race, she probably raised like $50,000 or something like that. She raised like $1.8 million. And then there were outside groups with another couple million attacking him. That doesn't happen on a normal cycle, right? But the reality is, with the Democrats were I got to give it to them. They were smart. They challenged these districts. They won in court. They understood that the districts were going to be favorable to them, and they were able to marshal massive amounts of money into Virginia to flip it. So I just think those were the two biggest factors.
What's the plan forward? The pathway forward?
We got to win the Senate. We have to win in 2020, because right now, Virginia's about a 50-50 state roughly, right? Both Dems and Republicans. If you look at the state, it's about 50-50. And so the reality is, half of the state is not being represented properly at the VA Senate, the VA House, the governor, the LG, the AG, the U.S. Senate. Luckily, we have some Congress people, but we need someone statewide, because if you don't have someone statewide, you don't have a big booming voice in the state for conservatives, and you don't have the ability to fundraise as much. We have to build back our party. You and I have talked about this. We got to do voter registration drives in Virginia, and the reality is we have to take it back, grassroots. You got to have somebody at a statewide Republican to be able to raise money. And I'm telling you right now, we're going to build the greatest grassroots, digital and physical organization. It's going to be called Defend Our Commonwealth. Defend Our Commonwealth. We're going to build the greatest one that we've ever seen in Virginia. We're doing that right now. We've already started, and we're going to win in 2020. And once we win in 2020, then we're going to win in 21. So we gotta build it back, get the momentum, and come back. I'm not, as you know, I don't quit. I might fall down, and I've done it. I've fell down many times, but I get the hell back up and keep going forward.
Well, nobody can say that you don't go forward when you've had some defeats. And as I always say to my family and to my kids, you have to risk failure to achieve success, and failure is the stepping stone up the success ladder. So you certainly worked hard. I appreciate what you're doing. And I really, really love the fact that you're going to take this fight. And I totally agree. We need a statewide win. The Democrats have won 18 straight statewide races. We need a victory, and then we can go from there. Scott Taylor, I'm over my time, and I've run out. Thank you for being with us. Scott, what's your
Thank you,
website?
John. TaylorForSenate.com. TaylorForSenate.com.